Welcome back. It's another beautiful day wherever you are, regardless of what those skies look like. It's another day that you get to be alive. And we are here joining together with VashSky for a conversation. We're going to try and find some meaning in this, and I think if we're lucky, we just might do it. We are going to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve, this time in regards to the Walt Disney Company, as we often do, and specifically on the way that the media has been spinning for the biggest kid on the block, and how that now Disney, with its degeneration in terms of its clout in the industry, how that media spin is beginning to dissipate a bit. So, Vash, let's dive straight in. We're going to start with an article you actually sent me. This is Rap Pro. I like the last part of that. Pro. Has a good sound to it. This by Drew Taylor. Why Disney ceded control of its Florida empire to Governor Ron DeSantis. Stop. Let's identify the spin already in the headline. Why Disney ceded control.
Right.
Disney did not cede control. Right. Disney had no ability to impact this one way or the other. That's the accurate statement. That's not, by the way, that's not me giving a slanted statement. It's not me giving any kind of political statement. I'm not interested in politics on this channel at all.
Yeah.
But the truth, the facts on the ground, the legal facts as they exist, Disney had no standing whatsoever. All right, let's dive in. Political pragmatism and an internal poll obtained by The Wrap led the company to cease its battle with the potential presidential candidate. Needs a period there. On the one side, there's Florida Governor DeSantis, a rising power in the Republican Party. On the other, there's the Walt Disney Company, the state's largest employer and global entertainment giant. It's a fight that could stretch on for years as DeSantis eyes the White House and Disney tries to keep expanding the jewel in its theme park chain, an important driver of profits that's still recovering from the pandemic. Despite the public feuding, most recently over a special tax district that eased Disney's expansion in Florida, there remains an uneasy alliance. DeSantis needs the jobs and tourism Disney provides to sell Florida as an economic success story, and stop. Okay. This is getting bad. All right, so here's the deal on this sentence. And then, Vash, I want to get your opinion on this.
Sure.
Special tax district, yes. So Disney, it's not that it's just a special tax district. Yes, that is what it is. Reedy Creek Improvement District. Right. But that is actually a special district inside the state of Florida, which encompasses two pseudo-cities. Yes. Those being the city of Bay Lake and the city of Buena Vista. And those two cities were originally supposed to be actual cities. But the Walt Disney Company pulled back from the original plans, and they decided that it was more befitting of them to have those two cities be, mobile home cul-de-sacs where they put a couple of double wides, more than a couple, several double wides around those cul-de-sacs, called them cities, gave them mayors, and Disney began to operate Walt Disney World under the guise of being two cities under a special district, when in fact, it's just mobile homes where they put whoever they want in them, and then they vote exactly the way that the Disney Company wants. Right. There's another part of this sentence that's absolutely wrong, though. DeSantis needs the jobs and tourism Disney provides to sell Florida as an economic success story.
Yes.
What? I mean... Yeah, I'm sorry. That sentence that sentence involves brain damage because is Disney going to cease to exist and therefore he loses those jobs? Disney, these people who think that Disney could move to Atlanta are insane. This isn't like in the original Sonic the Hedgehog movies where the Master Emerald floats Knuckles' island up in the sky and can move it anywhere he wants. Right. This is craziness. It's the size of Manhattan. Disney doesn't have an option. They can't get rid of people, within reason. They've got to employ the parks.
Isn't it twice the size of Manhattan? I mean, it's this huge
40 square miles.
Oh my goodness gracious! It's a huge landmass, and this is not a pop-up carnival. This is steel. This is concrete. These are not temporary buildings. They're permanent structures. There is no way that they are leaving.
We're picking on Drew Taylor, but it's going to get worse. I'm sorry.
Well, and here's the thing, though. I'll give Drew Taylor this. Okay. He does point out a detail here that I think is overlooked sometimes, in that Disney really did pit the Florida legislature against another project in the form of the Sierra Mountain Resort project, right? At the time that was going on. They had gotten all kinds of let's say special privileges out there in order to start that project, and the Disney company was intimating that, hey, we're going to go with one of these projects. So Florida, this is what they're offering. What are you offering? And that was part of why the concessions were so big and so broad for what was in 1967 the Reedy Creek Improvement District, and they got a lot, so much so that right after the legislature actually passes this, well, some members of that same Florida body actually sue and say, well, wait a minute, did we concede too much? And in 1968, a judge famously says, nope. That's exactly this is within the bounds of the Florida legislature and what they're able to do. This is why when Pro says when they ceded this fight or whatever, and why Disney didn't have a say in this, it's a legislative constructed body, right?
Well, so it even goes beyond that, though.
Sure.
Disney is not the target of any of this. This is a special district that is wholly separate from the Disney company.
Right.
And these cities are wholly separate from the Disney company.
Right.
The trick here is that Disney limited who could live in these cities. Because they own all the land, they made it so that these, remember, in quotes, cities, which are actually just mobile home cul-de-sacs. That's how Disney planned it out, right? You've got the original plan, cities, and then you get a cul-de-sac of mobile homes where Disney puts their employees, and that's who lives there. Because Disney controls those, Disney was operating as a de facto government in Florida. But in fact, Disney, despite operating that way as sort of the puppeteer controlling these entities are not Disney. And therefore, Disney doesn't even have standing in court. Disney had no ability to impact this whatsoever. And here's the other catch. This is the catch-22 that Disney found itself in.
Sure.
Had Disney attempted to claim that they were being unfairly targeted and that these cities are de facto Disney, then what happens is that they open themselves to massive litigation, because if they in fact are those two cities, and if they are in fact that special district, then a multitude of issues arise for the company, because the company is running pseudo cities that aren't real.
And that's the really kind of important thing to distinguish, and I think a lot of people don't, that kind of nuance that you just represented there, because in the court of public opinion, we know RCID, Disney, interchangeable. I think there's even a Orlando Sentinel article that goes into the board and how they're actually chosen, and they have to have some experience with Disney and so forth, and how that vetting process is so important, which I'm sure we'll get into in a moment. But you're right, though. In the court of public opinion, it might be one way, but in the legal court, in the legal field, right, there is a very much a distinction, or at least there was supposed to be, between the RCID.
Let's talk
Disney.
about some of those. Let's talk about some of those things, those shortcuts that could have gotten Disney in big trouble had Disney decided to say, "Oh no, these are us and we are them."
Right.
Okay, those are two cities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't municipalities have to provide education to their citizens? Don't they have to run a school system? These two cities don't.
They tried in Celebration, and that didn't go over very well at all. That was one of the major contentions.
And Celebration is not anymore. This gets complicated, but Celebration is not technically part of the rest of the Walt Disney World Resort. It's not part of RCID, which is now going to be this new district.
Correct.
So, but these two cities are, and those two cities don't have to do a lot of the things that real cities do. Right. They got to just sort of operate in this very gray, very sketchy territory, because everybody was just happy to go along with Disney doing Disney stuff, and everything's okay until Disney decided to become political. And once they became political, well, you know how politics work. Politics is ugly. And suddenly they didn't want to look the other way and let Disney continue to do what Disney had been doing.
Right. And I got to be honest with you. I always look, I'm a Disney fan, right? And I want to see the company do successfully and do well, but I never really had the problem with this kind of reassessment of RCID that other people had, because, like you said, they operate in a very gray space. And one of those special privileges they were afforded was to run their own kind of let's say police department. They had the ability to do
their own fire departments. Just think about the tremendous advantages that this affords Disney over all of their competition.
Sure, but there were stories coming out of the 90s suggesting that they were abusing some of those privileges in order to keep some stuff secret, right? In order for it not to come to light and to shield the company. And I always, reading those stories and going into the history of the RCID, it to be honest, it felt a little uncomfortable. It's like, this is a big conglomerate here that has essentially usurped the Constitution in some ways in order to
Vatican City inside Florida.
Exactly. 100%, right? Yeah. And it's like,
the mouse is the Pope.
Yeah. Are we comfortable with a corporation like Disney to have such wide sweeping power within its borders as they exist in the RCID? And you can make an argument, I guess, either way, but again, do we afford anybody else this? And hey, maybe the Disney company at one point could have been entrusted with that power, if maybe when Walt was still alive or something like that. But we all know the company is very different now. And so do we allow this body to exist? Frankly, I thought, hey, maybe it's time to be reassessed, especially after Epcot, the city, didn't actually come to fruition, which is what this was all about originally.
Right, because actual cities are hard, but mobile home cul-de-sacs are easy.
Yes.
All right, so let's continue along with this article. The latest blow DeSantis struck against what he called woke Disney came Friday as the state legislature stripped the governing body over Walt Disney World's land, the Reedy Creek Improvement District, of its autonomy. There's a new sheriff in town, DeSantis proclaimed as the bill moved towards passage. The big win for DeSantis is the fact that he, not Disney as the district's dominant landowner, will appoint members to the district's 5-person board, and the entity will be renamed the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. There's a bit of a misleading part here. Yes, DeSantis, I suppose, will have the ability to appoint those members, but in fact, it will be the executive branch in Florida for, perpetuity. So
yes, I believe the Senate
DeSantis
has to
leave, someone else will. Yeah, and it goes through the legislature as well.
Right, okay.
But that'll, as long as the political parties are aligned, essentially the executive branch, under the governor, will be the one who selects it and kicks it over to the Senate.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
So let's see. Why would the Walt Disney Company? This is where we get into the analysis portion,
right?
Which is where the spin will begin. Why would the Walt Disney World Company, one of the largest and most powerful media conglomerates, and certainly one of the most litigious, allow this to happen? Political pragmatism and even concern about how the dispute was affecting the theme parks played a role. According to internal polling obtained by The Wrap, Disney had been losing ground with 2 key demographics. Families with young kids, that's due to exorbitant pricing. Well, they did that to themselves.
Yep.
And those over 50, and that's over perceptions of the company's political stances. All right, Vash, any thoughts on that part right there?
Well, you remember the last time we actually had one of these videos was going over Universal Europe, right? And I think there was a portion in that conversation where I actually quoted this internal poll. That hadn't been reported anywhere else, not that I know of anyway. And to see The Wrap actually, utilize this poll and kind of connect it to this political pragmatism narrative that they're going with right here, and suggesting that the company was affected by that poll specifically, it's a very kind of interesting thing, because at the time it was, from what I understand, it was news to you, but now we're kind of seeing some effects of this. Maybe not so much with the RCID, but we're seeing Iger talk about accountability and how that's really, really important. Well, why would he go on about accountability? Is he kind of, backwards saying that, hey, look, we can't just have, the saying is woke, go woke, go broke, right? We can't have some of those kind of activist passion projects anymore? Do we have to be maybe accountable for our budgets and for how successful these movies are at the actual box office and have them appeal to a larger demographic of audience? We also see the company instituting more tier 0 pricing, for example, for Disneyland, getting rid of the parking fee associated with Walt Disney World resorts, right? And it's like, okay, they want the perception of value out there. Well, why? Maybe this poll has something to do with all that.
Well, it probably does. There was also an Axios poll last year that showed that Disney had become essentially a politicized corporation where half of
Wow.
their consumer base disliked them. And that's a really
Mm.
bad place for a children's entertainment company to be.
Absolutely.
What you would really want to see is 90% plus approval from everybody because you're staying out of all this. But when you become political, what you do is you inevitably make half the room hate you. So, not good for Disney. As a result, Disney asked itself a huge question. I'm not sure why it was huge. According to an individual with knowledge of the situation, that's about as vague as it gets. I mean, I'm a person who has to keep sources anonymous to safeguard them in their careers. But seriously, an individual with knowledge of the situation. Hey, Vash, you have knowledge of this situation?
Sure do.
I have knowledge of this situation. Are we the sources in this one?
Maybe, I don't know. You know,
Maybe
I hadn't seen anybody talk about that poll, so that's a very interesting thing.
Oh, what a great way to put that one. Okay. Do we want to be DeSantis' punching bag for the next 2 or 4 years? Is that worth whatever economic benefit comes from controlling the Reedy Creek Improvement District? You betcha it was. You betcha it was to control the Reedy Creek Improvement District. The consensus was no. Okay, that's totally phony baloney. There's no truth to that at all.
Yeah.
Here's why. Disney would take in a heartbeat. I mean, they would love to be the punching bag for 2 or 4 years if it meant holding on to the RCID, because that will go on for 100 years. And that's 100 years of setting their own taxes, of being able to construct their own projects without having to reveal them early, of being able to control all of their land management. Does Disney think that over that 100 years, I mean, just count up the tax differences that are going to occur and then multiply that by 100, and you'll understand why they would have loved the option of being a punching bag for 2 years to keep RCID.
Oh, correct. Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, there's been some arguments where, well, they don't have any representation right now and blah, blah, blah. My thing is look, Legal Mindset and Valiant Renegade have broken this down extensively, but apparently, according to them, this is how special districts work all over, not only Florida, but in various parts of the country and so forth. This is absolutely something that you can do. And even to mount an offense, maybe let's say in the legal field, I mean, you would have to get the residents of RCID to actually do that, and that's going to be sketchy territory. So you're right; they really can't do anything about it. But I have a question for you, Pro.
Ooh,
do you think? I mean,
what do you got?
Well, in my mind, okay, Disney's not giving up this fight, right? They're just, to me, you know, outside looking in, it just seems like they're maybe, you know, let's say, drawing back a little bit before maybe taking the fight, at least in other ways, maybe with, I don't know, endorsing some, you know, with donations and so forth, some legislators that are more friendly to Disney, or maybe even a governor that's more friendly to Disney, so that they can get these provisions changed at a later date. I'm sorry. Do you see that kind of happening in the future?
There are 2 reasons that Disney is in a world of hurt right now. One of those reasons is that they currently have made the majority of their cast members very angry.
Yes.
So they have a battle going on right now between the cast members' unions, and Disney is not budging. And the cast members have come out now. The union has come out with a slogan that I think is highly damaging to Disney and puts them further into negative light with Florida at large, and that is "Say no to poverty." And so what are you going to do if you're Disney, you know, and you've got this union saying, we demand a wage that lifts us out of poverty? Well, my gosh, what a thing to be against if you're Disney. And so that's one reason that Disney already has lost the goodwill of Floridians. It's really hard, whether Disney's right or wrong, it's really hard to come back from that kind of messaging. The second reason that Disney is in a world of hurt is because even if they get somebody in the opposing political party into the governor's seat, okay, if they move into the governor's mansion,
sure,
fine. But it would be unimaginable that Disney would ever manage to get the same kind of conditions they had for the Reedy Creek Improvement District.
Right.
So Disney really is in a bad spot here. Even if they could mitigate this by having somebody come in and give them more favorable terms, they're still never going back to this situation they've had. This was This was a one-of-a-kind, totally unique system they had. It gave them massive advantages over all the competition. There was nothing like it in all of North America.
Oh, absolutely.
Gone.
I mean, there were. I could just tell you right now. I mean, people ask like, "Oh, why are they donating to this party, whatever in Florida?" And it's like you have to understand what they have in the RCD. That's why they donated so much money in order to keep it the way it was, because they knew the value of it. Matt Gaetz, now a Congress member, but he previously was part of the state legislative body in Tallahassee. Previously said stuff like, "Hey, if your bill contains rats, it's dead on arrival."
Right.
Talking about the massive influence that Disney used to have over the aspects of government as they exist in Florida, right? And there was just no political will at that time to change it. And I think you're right, bro. I think it's going to be hard to generate any political will for the situation to change going forward in their direction, because I think you're right. I think they are kind of there was already friction when it came to Disney and the locals of Florida, let's say. But now that has just gone into the stratosphere, I think.
Well, Disney could have fallen prostrate in front of DeSantis and said, "We're so sorry," but there's no way in the world they were going to do that. And that would have created, honestly, a whole slew of new problems for them, So that was their option. They could either grovel or they lose RCID, and they've elected to lose the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Honestly, that's probably the right decision after a plethora of horrible decisions that put them in this spot in the first place. Never get involved if you're any company. I don't care if you're selling candles. Never get involved in the issues of the bedroom and when those should be taught to small children.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever touch that. If you are any company at all, stay away from it unless you actually sell items of the bedroom. And even then, probably not a good idea. All right, let's keep going.
To get children involved, I would say is yes. That's not a good idea.
Maybe they're selling children's pillows or something. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true.
Maybe my euphemism wasn't carrying as far as we intended. Who knows?
Okay,
all right.
Okay.
Disney finds itself in a complicated quagmire of prior allegiances. I will give Drew this. He's quite verbose. Internal debates, lost market share, and the fear of reprisal as the media giant faces a changing political landscape and a host of business challenges under returning CEO Bob Iger. We are focused on the future and are ready to work within this new framework, and we will continue to innovate, inspire, and bring joy to the millions of guests who come to Florida to visit Walt Disney World each year. Jeff Vail, president of the Walt Disney World Resort, said in a statement after the bill passed, which essentially is the white flag.
Yes.
The new arrangement could open up unexpected possibilities, including the sale of land within the vast Walt Disney World empire. Reedy Creek board members previously had to be landowners. Well, no, they didn't. They had to be selected by the landowners, and the landowners were Disney, and Disney. Something Disney handled by giving each of its handpicked appointees a 5-acre parcel of land that was to be returned after the board member stepped
Are you a
down.
Landowner when you have to receive that land back?
Right. People, are you understanding now what we're talking about when we say they opened themselves up to massive trouble? If they said, "Oh yeah, we are these two cities. We're synonymous with them." Oh, it was going to be a huge issue, right? Yes. And don't think for a second, this new rumor that's out there that actually the cities, some people are saying this is how Disney will combat it now, that the cities will dissolve the special district and the cities will operate autonomously. Oh yeah, go ahead and try that. Because you can't even imagine how much trouble those two cities would get into should they be held under scrutiny.
Right.
Oh. Anyway, actually selling land to outsiders might have allowed them to bid for a district board seat. But now that DeSantis has taken over, Disney can sell residential plots, something it is actually considering. Oh my God. Well, they specifically drew the lines for Golden Oak so that it didn't have any power in here. Maybe they could just actually rezone that to be inside. Oh, no, They actually can't, because Florida controls that now. I forget.
That's true. Yeah, I think the rezoning or annexation of lands and how it's actually proportioned and so forth, they have to go through, I think, a legislative procedure in order for that to take place. So they cannot, bro. You make this 2 point here.
So let's hit one last thing because we are going a little long. Let's hit one last thing. I just want everybody to understand the bias that's in here.
Sure.
All right, so here's the next part. Eventually, after employees staged walkouts and protests, by the way, that was one person at Walt Disney World, Chapek said something. We were opposed to the bill from the outset, and we chose not to take a public position because we felt we could be more effective working behind the scenes directly with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, Chapek said during a shareholders meeting in March of last year. That went well for him. I'm sure he has a long and golden future with the company. Oh, wait, no. That's when DeSantis had a meltdown. Okay, pause. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to write the news and you want to have any semblance of being unbiased, don't say that somebody who clearly is winning in this article had a meltdown. That's incongruent. Like, at least just use neutral language. Good grief. I mean, Vash,
totally agree.
Final thoughts on this article, and we're going to show how the media now is shifting, and they're no longer spinning for Disney. So,
well,
it's very this article last thing.
It's very biased, like you said, right? And yeah, I would have liked to have that bias just taken back a little bit, but
turn it down a little.
Tone it down a little. A pretty decent synopsis. I mean, it's a very kind of long kind of road to get here. But yeah, I would have liked a little less span, a little bit more fact, a little bit more objective writing quality and so forth. The last Bob Chapek quote, we thought we were more effective working behind the scenes directly with lawmakers on both sides. That always was a quote that kind of like, rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. And
you know what they really thought, Vash? What they really thought was, we don't want to touch this.
Yeah.
Universal Studios isn't touching this.
Right.
Busch Gardens isn't touching this.
Right.
Nobody in Florida with any sense in their head who runs a company is touching this because it is as hot as it can get in terms of the culture war. That's what Chapek was really thinking.
And then they put out a statement saying, "Oh, it's a corporate goal of ours to overturn this legislation." It's like, guys, I mean,
we got to have those preschoolers learning about topics that mommies and daddies might get mad at us about.
Oh, so inadvisable.
Genius. All right, so let's head over now to Deadline.
Yes.
This one by Anthony D'Alessandro. Okay, we like Anthony pretty well. Gets off the rails a few times, but for the most part, really, really good. The Marvel's zooms to November Haunted Mansion going into late July, release dates. Okay, so essentially what we want to show you here is spin has stopped. Okay. This just in, Disney Marvel Studios sequel, The Marvels, will no longer be opening on July 28th, rather November 10th, which is where Black Panther Wakanda Forever opened last year over the Veterans Day long holiday weekend to a November record of 181.3 million. November has also been a prime place for other MCU titles like Thor Ragnarok and Doctor Strange, among others. Okay, so we start with a little spin. Okay. July 28th is towards the end of summer. That's when The Marvels was originally set to launch. July 28th is not a good time. That's the end of summer. You're going into into school time. You get less audience because young people are going back to school, whether that be high school, college, what have you.
Correct.
However, November 10th is worse because early November is the time when you put out a movie and then you've got multiple weeks that movie will have its box office run. And then you get Thanksgiving weekend where whatever is the new movie just explodes. So if you come in early November, you don't get to ride the wave of Thanksgiving weekend. And the little spin here that we get is that Black Panther Wakanda Forever, that didn't do well. I mean, it says it came out to a November record of 181, but guess what? Black Panther Wakanda Forever had a 50% to 60% drop in actual attendance from the original Black Panther to this one. That's not good.
Well, there's a reason it's a record, right? I mean, it's even if it didn't do all that well, it still broke a record. I mean, it's a soft month, and then you have Wish coming out on the 22nd, and so that's
kind of Vash. It gets worse. You know what movie comes out the week after this new spot for the Marvels?
Oh, I'm not sure. What's the slate?
The Hunger Games prequel is coming out. Guess what? Those two movies are aiming for the exact same
demo. Yep.
Yeah.
Exact with Marvel's being a kind of a female featured film.
Guess what also is coming out a week after? Trolls 3. Again, pulling families. This is a horrible spot. So there's a little spin to begin, but in reality, this is bad. Here's how you can also know that it's bad. Sure. Going on July 28th is now Haunted Mansion, moving up from August 11th. Moving Haunted Mansion to late July enables the studio to capture more kids off on summer break versus mid-August. Okay, here's the deal. If you think, like if Disney thought that Haunted Mansion was a better chance for them at the end of summer than an MCU film, and this is also coming on the heels. I mean, this news is breaking as Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania comes into theaters, and I think everybody knows that's bad. In fact, I am now naming Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania the Phase 5 dive because it's so bad. The Phase 5 dive has begun, and not only did it take down Ant-Man, but apparently it's taking down the Marvels.
That's a great point, Pro. I mean, this news is right off of the kind of middling kind of weekend projections that we have for that film. And I try to make this point to people, and some people are like, well, it's too soon or whatever. These things are so front loaded, right? There's people want to see the continuation of the storyline. If you can't get them in opening weekend, I mean, it's just not going to leg out. Ants might have legs, but this film is likely not, given the recent performance of films like Thor 4, Wakanda Forever, and Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness. It's just people just don't come in as compared to other films.
Well, this is easily the worst Marvel movie that I have ever seen. I mean, it's bad. But just looking at this coverage now from Anthony D'Alessandro, notice. I mean, we get a little spin in the beginning, right? We get a little cover for Disney,
right?
But there's no stuff here going on about how fantastic Marvel is and how great they're doing. The usual stuff we get out of the trades, because remember the trades, one of their jobs is to carry water for the industry because, well, they need the industry to do well because they're covering the industry. If there's no industry, there's no them.
Yeah.
But you don't get, there's no spin. It just ends. And I think what's starting to happen now, as Disney is cutting content, as Disney is postponing Marvel stuff, as Disney is ceasing to attempt whatever fight they could have possibly mustered in Florida, I think the industry is beginning to realize that Disney is in a form of trouble, that the trades and the access media, they can't continue to cover it up. Now, they're not going to go out of their way to damage Disney, but they're not going to put themselves in a position where 6 months down the road, they look like idiots because, oh my gosh, how could you have not been telling us that Disney was on this path? I don't know where Disney's going, but in terms of the MCU, it's not good.
Well, and Pro, you and VR have covered this, I think, beautifully, talking about how these are not good things here, and you're starting to see the damn break, let's say, from the media, like you said. We just saw that Hollywood Reporter article, which you on your channel actually brilliantly break down in amazing detail. Definitely subscribe to see that to that video here. But
I'm trying.
Right? But that article goes into saying, oh, hey, you got flops, with Lightyear, flops with Strange World. You have 7,000 employees being cut.
Encanto was actually a flop at the box office. Nobody wants to talk about that.
Right. You have 7,000 employees that are being cut, $5.5 billion in savings that are going to be accruing. They're spreading out the Marvel slate, reducing projects, curating them, all these things. And it's like, okay, now this is not looking good here. I mean, this is really kind of
There's a reason they fired their CEO, replaced the chair of the board. I mean, those are not things that happen in a company that's healthy. So, and I don't know what the stock is right now, and I'm not here to give stock advice, but I can tell you that quick jump that we saw after the last earnings report is gone. I mean, it was vaporized. And so, at least to a couple of days ago, Disney stock was actually lower than when we went into the earnings report with Bob Iger. So mission not accomplished. The investors are also getting nervous about this thing.
Absolutely, and I think they should be because it's it's hard to illustrate how precarious of a position that the Disney company is actually in. I mean, I talk to friends who want big projects for the parks and so forth, and it's like, guys, we're still in survival mode here. I mean, you can look at Josh D'Amaro's "What If" segment with all the enthusiasm you want. Doesn't mean that they're going to make any of that.
Some of these blogs that carried that stuff and pretended like, oh, it's happening. We're getting Encanto Land, and we're getting, I forget what was, the Disneyland vloggers. Oh, they're all about how we're getting Pandora. And it's like, no. No, 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 no. He said avatar experience.
Hmm.
Experience. If
Hmm.
he had said expansion, that would have meant that. When he says experience, that has a specific meaning that should cause everybody to go, wait a minute. An experience could be a meet and greet. Josh DeMauro, what are you really saying? You tell us right now. But instead, they're all so excited. Oh my gosh, we're going to get flight of passage. Oh my gosh. And it's like, okay, you guys go have fun with that one.
Well, I will say I don't mean to disagree with you at all, Pro, but I am kind of in that camp where if you're going to spend any capex money, probably Avatar's a good place to spend it.
Oh, it would be.
But
It
you're
would
right,
be a
though.
fantastic thing. It would be a fantastic for them to do that.
Sure.
But the problem is that they don't want to spend right now.
True.
So Disney right now, what they want to do is, for whatever reason, they want to focus on single-time guests.
Yeah.
They don't have to do much to get one-time guests. And the reason they want one-time guests is because those one-time guests spend tons more money than annual pass holders.
So
That's what they're aiming for. But they don't have to do all this spending on CapEx projects on these expansions. And so even if you look at take Splash Mountain, for example. You've got people so excited about Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And, they're going to do such a wonderful job. No. I'm hearing from very close sources. And Vash, you've seen the video where I'm talking to somebody who's extremely close to the project.
Yes.
This is like the budget is nothing like what it needs to be to produce something of equal value to what we're losing. And that's the problem. They don't want to spend. They don't want to increase capacity. They just want to draw in people who will spend more with having to do as little as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they're even hesitant about expanding capacity. Thankfully, Iger said something about expanding capacity of these parks, but you've seen Josh DeMauro kind of like say, we're really about controlling the demand that we actually have, not necessarily the capacity. And it's like,
and that's where I'm hoping, because that was mixed messaging, and you're exactly right. And I keyed in on that when it was said. I'm hoping that long term that Iger has realized we've got to grow. Because the only real solution to making more money in the parks really is you have to have more capacity. You've got to move more people through the turnstiles. That's how you do it. You can't continue to aim at the $400,000 and up annual salary crowd. There's not enough of them. And they're going to the Bahamas. They're going to the Mediterranean. They're not going to Disneyland and Disney World like your average individuals who they love the magic.
Well, the over 50 crowd that we just saw with that internal polling, right? That's grandmothers trying to take their kids to Walt Disney World, or at least considering it, right? That's people with institutional wealth and so forth. People, Gen Xers who have money to spend, especially maybe in the retirement years and so forth, that they're not getting. That's a big part of the demographic that they want to come that aren't, because of how political they are and some of the other decisions that they have made, especially those regarding Splash Mountain and others. So I think they're trying to figure out, but as you just illustrated beautifully in the interview with with Splash Mountain directly there a few days ago, there are still people within the company who don't get it. Who aren't about fame. They're not about financial performance. They're not about any of those things. They're just singularly motivated by ideology, and it's really hurting the company.
That's because when Iger decided to move this company into a political position in order to bolster his own political ambitions, he brought in individuals who have real power, and those individuals with real power, they are real ideologues, and they're hiring people who are not competent. And I hate to say it. I hate to put it that way. But they are hiring incompetent people who have agendas to push. And I mean, I know who these people are. I'm not putting them out there. I'm not putting their faces out there. That's wrong. And so I would not do that. But I'll just say that if the audience knew or could see some of these individuals who are working on these projects, you would know they don't have tremendously discernible skills, and they don't act in a way that is professional.
Yeah.
So, and I mean that in their professional lives. I mean, they don't carry themselves in a good way in their private lives. These are people who were brought in for a reason that has nothing to do with making a better guest experience. You can't do that just on and on and on without a degradation of the experience for everybody. Vash, final thoughts, then we're going to wrap this thing up.
Final thoughts to go off of your point right there. I mean, we saw this with Marvel Comics, for example, right? They were getting bottom feeder writers and so forth, and comic illustrators to hire them on for a lower salary, getting rid of the legacy guys. And we saw the damage that it had on the Marvel Comics brand and so forth. And now we're starting to see that kind of mentality permeate other divisions within the company right now. And look, the media, they might try to spin, but now they may not be talking about why Disney is underperforming, but they are talking about the what, and that's key here.
Disney, if you hire somebody who can't make their own bed, they probably can't make a good movie, and they probably can't make a good ride. That's just the bottom line. Vash, where can people find you in this great, big, beautiful web out there?
Well, the best place people can find me is going to be at VashSky on Twitter. It's right down there as listed. Go ahead and type that in. It should pop up. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the OG55 channel, where we have some great shows right there. We have Story Geeks with Jay. We have Stitcher's Corner with our good buddy George. Orange Grove 55 with his Orange Nerd. We talk about everything behind the scenes. And, well, my show is there as well, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice and news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Well played. Well, I'm subscribed. I hope others will be as well. Folks and friends, if you've enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, hit share, subscribe if you're not already, and you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about that notification bell. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.